Guys, it's the real Brad Bell here. I just wanted to give you a quick disclaimer for this episode, and that is that Jerry Reed, Barbecue 17, had a few technical problems, so he did join the show. You will hear me say he will not be joining the show as this podcast progresses, but he actually does join the show. He just joins it when we get into about the middle of Epic News, so you can look forward to him being on the pod despite what you hear me saying. Also, Amos from the Just Being Amos podcast was supposed to join us for a Black Panther review. However, he was unable to do so due to a very, very tough day at work, so we completely understand that, Amos. So instead, my beautiful wife, Abby, who is pregnant with our first daughter, our first kid, Harper Jane, stepped in to take Amos's spot and review Black Panther with us. So the mother of Beagles stepping up. Love you, honey. Thank you for doing that. Without further ado, here's episode 86 of the Confirmed Epic Podcast. Enjoy the show.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
And here we go.
Live from the Hollywood foothills of North Carolina, welcome to episode 86 of the Confirmed Epic Podcast, the official podcast of the epicreview.com and proudly presented by the Geeks Worldwide Radio Network. I'm one of your hosts, the real Brad Bell, and joining me tonight, as always, is no one. That's right, I'm going to be flying solo, at least for the first portion of this podcast. My Chewbacca to my Han, Jerry Reed, aka Barbecue 17, could not join us tonight because he had severe computer problems, so we hope he gets that straightened out for episode 87 of the pod, when next week we will review the Cloverfield Paradox on Netflix currently. So we're going to have a regular show. I'm going to get into what I've been checking out. We'll knock out some epic news items of the week. And then at the end, my wife, Abby, a.k.a. the mother of Beagles, will join me for a very special review of the biggest movie in the world right now, Ryan Coogler's The Black Panther. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the pod and what I've been checking out this week.
Check checklist? Check. Double check checking of checklist? Check.
This week, I've been checking out Marvel Legacy, my first dive into the latest reboot. Well, I guess Marvel Fresh Start would be the latest reboot from the Big Two Publishing Company. The story I'm checking out comes from Mark Waid from pages of the Avengers and also the Champions. So everyone knows who the Avengers are at this point, but the Champions are a much younger group of heroes starring Visions, Amadeus Cho Hulk, Sam Alexander, Nova, the young Cyclops, Time Displaced, and Kamala Khan as Miss Marvel. And the story we have here is what kicked off the Avengers/Champions entry into Marvel Legacy. And that is a big crossover that is only involving 2 books, and it's not a separate event, so I definitely appreciate that for Marvel. And it sees them matching up with the Avengers to almost stop what would be, I guess, incursions, as you're having 2 worlds collide. The name of this trade paperback, and if you're watching the video feed, you can see it there live on YouTube, is Worlds Collide. What's cool also, I gotta say, is the art by Alex Ross, and I know he's not doing interiors here. Ramos is doing Huberto Ramos is doing the interiors, but he's doing the covers, and there's a nice cover gallery that Marvel puts in the back of all their trades. But you get to see some nice teamwork. You really get to see the power sets in use, but you get to see them go to, and I know this is nothing new when you're talking about the Avengers or Marvel Comics in general, you're getting to see them go into what would best be described as an not alternate reality, I guess. If you ever watched the TV show Fringe and you ever watched Flash on the CW, they talk about different vibrational frequencies. So basically a flip side of our Earth. So it's that whole infinite universe theory where molecules can only be made up so many ways. And we see them meet a mysterious villain named the High Evolutionary, which I think his identity is revealed in Avengers No Surrender, which follows that. That's a massive storyline going on right now. I'm reading all Marvel in trade, so I have that pre-ordered at Amazon, so I don't know the identity, so don't worry about me spoiling the High Evolutionary for you. What really resonated with me in this book, though, was the stuff between Vision and his daughter, Viv Vision. And even though he created her as a synthetic android, just like he is, of course, he was created famously by Hank Pym Ultron, it's really just cool to see their interaction, just very authentic, that father-daughter interaction, and how even though she's this hero with these godlike abilities, everybody knows how powerful Vision is from the MCU films. You got Paul Bettany playing him there, but you kind of have the same level, the same power set with Viv Vision as you do Vision. In fact, in some ways, she can even be described as a little more powerful. And I guess I'll do some mild spoilers here for this. So if you hadn't read Worlds Collide and you want to check it out one day, I mean, go ahead and skip ahead a minute and a half of the pod. The High Evolutionary experiments with genetic crossbreeding, kind of similar like that weird early 2000s movie Spliced, which freaked me out. And body horror flick, more on that another day. But he is basically mixing animals and humans and creating the ultimate hybrid that is, gonna evolve well as time goes on. And he chooses to evolve Viv by turning her into an actual human. And Vision struggles with this. He's already struggled with the fact that he had a vision. I know the Vision having a vision, right? That he was going to outlive her, and that really made him distraught. But she is turned into human form, and he has to deal with that. He has to deal with the true mortality of his daughter. And he tries to rebuild her, and let's just say, I'm not going to spoil any more, that doesn't go too well. I like the Avengers team in this. I mean, you got Thor, Vulcan, you got Wasp. I think this is Janet Van Dyne's daughter, though, that we were introduced to not too long ago. You got Hercules back. I mean, that was one of my favorite characters in Mighty Avengers back in the late 2000s, and he's just, he's not quite Thor, but he's just got a really good personality. He's not as arrogant as Thor. He's more of a humble hero, but just the panels and just seeing how characters like Viv Vision and Miss Marvel just work together. Like, I know a lot of hate has went toward the Champions just because it was not so well received, all this this, let's say, newer age Marvel vision for the future. But I mean, you can complain about it, you can argue about it all you want, but Kamala Khan and Jane Foster Thor, who are featured prominently in this book, have really cemented their place within Marvel lore, and it's on full display in this book. I mean, there's an awesome section, awesome kind of half splash page. I'm looking at it now where Kamala, Miss Marvel, picks up this boulder, and it's just like, wow, this girl's power set is badass. I would almost rather see her in a movie than the Brie Larson Miss Marvel. If you're tuning in on YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in to the Confirmed Epic podcast. Jerry couldn't join me tonight, but my wife Abby is joining me for the Black Panther review, which has already been pre-recorded. So that's pretty much what I've been checking out this week. I got caught up on some Action Comics. I'm caught up to the point where we're getting into the Booster Gold Superman team up. It's not finished yet, so I don't really know how I feel about that as a whole. But it's really cool to see such a arrogant superhero like Booster Gold team up with Superman, the Boy Scouts, that whole Iron Man and Captain America dynamic. But we're getting it from the DC point of view. But I can't pass judgment on that until I finish that story. So we got quite a few really interesting epic news stories this week. Let's go ahead and get into those. Just going to hit some Toy Fair stuff up here, this leftover from last week. We didn't get to the Kotobukiya booth. They do a lot of the PVC statues, and they showed off and put up for pre-order And it's relevant to this podcast, which is why I'm bringing it up. If you want to hear about Toy Fair, go back to episode 85 of the pod. You can hear Jerry and I really dive deep into what you can expect in collecting in 2018. But they showed off a Gotham by Gaslight PVC statue that's going to be retailing for $120. It's a 1/10 scale statue, and just to be PVC, the sculpting looks really nice. It's Batman on a Victorian chimney. And I just thought that deserved a shout out because we didn't get to it last week. And it ended up being one of my favorite things of the show, and just really resonated with me as something that I may look into picking up one day, since that it was a very popular show. That Gotham by Gaslight store did a lot for the Confirmed Epic podcast, so we appreciate that. We got our first look at the Lost in Space trailer.
Humankind evolves. It's how we survive. Through ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters from above. We adapt our skills, our languages, our very bodies in order to live. Earth is our home, but only so long as it keeps us safe. When this world can no longer serve that purpose, another planet, another colony, another chance. The rest of human history begins now.
Impact detected. Brace for impact.
Danger, Will Robinson.
The Lost in Space Netflix show that's hitting Netflix April 13th. And it didn't look good, but it almost looks so bad it could be good, which kind of disappoints me because I was actually a big fan of the 90s movie. Lost in Space, for those of you who don't know, was a space travel science fiction TV show. I think it came on in the 1970s, and a big part of that was it was a family. It was almost like Swiss Family Robinson, but in space, which I know that reference is dated now. It was a family who was trusted with carrying on civilization in a different planet after their world comes to an end. And over time, the main focus becomes on the boy who grows up over the course of the show. His name's Will Robinson. He has a robot named B4 or B8. If you know that, tweet it to me at the real Brad Bell, DREEL Brad Bell. But the movie was huge in the 90s. It was marketed the crap out of. There was like a Long John Silver's fast food tie-in. I don't know if they have Long John Silver's anymore. It was like a fast food chain place. Tweet that to me if they do and you know that. But I think if you are a fan of the original show, or you're a fan of that 90s film, and I think that came out in like March or April, like 96, 97. I'm gonna see if Jerry would be up for reviewing that on the pod. That'd be a lot of fun. It had like Matthew LeBlanc in. I think it had William Hurt in it. Matthew LeBlanc's Joey from Friends, for those of you that don't know. It had Lacey Chabert in it, who's now like a big Hallmark movie star, and she was in Mean Girls. But I remember getting the robot of Will Robinson's robot for Easter one year, and just one of my favorite childhood toys. The toy line for that was really good. Of course, you would mash it. The famous quote was "Danger, danger, Will Robinson," but it basically falls on Will Robinson, this robot saving civilization, and it's a good story, but all versions of it are extremely dated and didn't age well. So the prospects of having a Netflix show, especially with the quality and budget of Netflix shows now, really had me excited. And after seeing this, it just looks cheap. It looks like a throwaway. It looks like it will be in the Netflix news cycle for probably 24 to 48 hours, and then will just be disposed of. I really would like to at least review the pilot on the pod. So, I'm willing to give it a chance. It can't be any worse than The Punisher. I know people have given me some crap for that, but The Punisher is like watching paint dry. I'm sorry. I know. I've been told by so many people I need to stick it out. So we'll see. But yeah, Lost in Space hits Netflix April 13th. So I'm looking forward to that. Let's get into some comics news. There were some big industry shaking news here. DC announced that they're getting their own previews magazine. Those of you that are not familiar with previews, they were really big in the mid to early 2000s through the 90s and 80s. It's a magazine comic book shops would give you, massive, like phone book size. I get that's not even relevant these days. Most kids don't even know what a phone book is. But anyway, a massive magazine, full color magazine. They gave you 3 months in advance the product that was going to be coming out was in that magazine. So you're always 3 months ahead, and you ordered your stuff through that magazine with your local comic book shop, and they made sure that you had it. And sometimes if you're a reservist at that shop, you got a discounted rate. Well, Marvel, DC, they would design special art just to catch your eye in these preview magazines, especially during the 90s comic boom. And eventually Marvel pulled out and created their own previews. And if you ordered the big previews mag, you still got the Marvel one. Then Image did it, and now DC's doing it. So I don't know how big of a deal it is. I don't think previews are as relevant as they are. Your diehard comic book readers get them. But for the most part, I think most people really just use the internet to see what's coming up and don't use magazines, let alone previews magazines at all. So I don't know if you're out there, if you still use previews, hit me up on Twitter. I'd love to just be interested to get a feel for who actually does use previews. Speaking of previews, now this is a much bigger deal. They announced that they are launching their own digital pull box service. So a pull box is what you have at a comic book store. You reserve 5-10 books a month. They order them for you 3 months in advance. They usually give you a 10 to 15% discount depending on how many books you're picking up. But now, instead of going straight to your comic book store, you're going to be able to order through Diamond directly. All right, Diamond Select, for those of you that don't know, is the only comic books distributor in the U.S. So they get all the books from Image, Marvel, DC, and they send them to local comic book shops. And previously, you had to order them. To order something from Diamond, it had to be done through the comic book shops. It was a way to keep business to them. Well, now what you're going to be able to do is go on preview. I think it's previews.com, and starting in April, I believe, April 2018, maybe May, but I'm pretty sure it's April, you're going to be able to control your own pull box from there. So you pick your comic book store, so you can still use your local shop, and you order what you want to, and you add and drop things as you please. There's only one catch. That catch being your comic book store has to participate. Now, in more rural areas that have one comic book store, I don't know if they're going to be willing to participate because they got a monopoly in that area. Your bigger cities, of course, like Heroes aren't hard to find in Charlotte. I'm sure Shelton Drum will be participating. But I'm kind of worried about this. I'm worried about this for a couple different reasons. One, all right, Jerry Reed is going to be joining us now. So, Jerry, what we were talking about, we're into epic news now. Thank you for joining us, my friend.
Epic news. I'm glad to be here finally.
Yeah, so, Jerry, what we have here is a big news from...
A failure to communicate.
We did have that, for sure. But what we have here is big news in the comic books world. Previews and Diamond have decided they are going to let their customers basically directly pre-order through them online beginning in April, but it's still going to be sending it to their local comic book shop. So there's a couple catches here. So your comic book shop has to be willing to participate. If not, you can't use this service. But if they're willing to participate, you can go on there 3 months in advance, control your own pull box. And I think this sounds like an interesting concept because a lot of times one of the biggest problems buying single issues with your local shop is it gets frustrating if they fail to add a title that you really wanted. Even it just may have slipped their mind. What do you think?
Yeah, something gets misordered or something like that. So
Yeah, what do you think about
I
this,
like that.
Jerry?
I mean, from what I'm hearing, that's kind of a cool way. Again, when do you tend to buy stuff? I tend to buy stuff if I'm sitting around. I'm like, I'll browse Amazon or I'll browse, eBay or I'll browse an online comic store. I might go to a comic shop and browse a little bit, but tend to sit there online and look for something. So that's a neat way to take advantage of the fact that a lot of these successful online models that allow for pre-orders let you pick stuff at your leisure. And so this is cool because you can pick them at your leisure, you can add them on, and then they're still not cannibalizing the sales of comic shops.
Yeah, and you're somebody who quit buying single issues, you just read trades now. Would this make you more likely to pick up single issues again? I know you probably won't because you're so set in trades now.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say it would because I just don't like reading single issues. It just frustrates me a little bit.
Yeah. I was saying before you hopped on too, I'm kind of worried about smaller retailers like Jim Wa's Collectors World in Gastonia, North Carolina, maybe not embracing this because they're not as technologically savvy, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you see that as a problem?
I mean, I guess, but I mean, one of the comic shops near me, Imperial Emporium, they absolutely pull stuff up on their computer, and that's how they place orders. I mean, my guess is anybody with a Diamond account probably has to in some way be able to do this. So hopefully it gets them more sales, and again, connects folks who are looking at these things online with a local shop as well. I mean, again, more people could hear about this and decide to use this service and find out local shops. So it could be a good way for some local shops to expand.
Yeah, that's true. I think if the service is implemented right and you see results.
And publicized well.
Excuse me?
And publicized well. If people know what's going on with it and understand it.
Yeah, that's true. And they got to have some statute of limitations on there. You can't constantly add, drop, pre-order, cancel pre-order calls. I mean, there's got to be a set cutoff date because the business is relying on you picking these books up. Yeah, so I think it will have some kinks. It will be very interesting to see because physical single issues, are probably struggling the most right now of any type of comics style of reading. Digital is doing great. Trades are flying off the shelf. So it'll be interesting to see if this can save, or maybe not save, that's not the right word, but revitalize the single issue market. Because those variant covers and, holographic tactics aren't pulling it. So, Jerry, let's talk about some more comic book stuff here. Marvel announced today that they're launching a new Hulk series. Now, this comes with a little bit of a twist, as Jar Jar Binks would say. It is the...
Jar Jar Binks said a twist?
Who is that? Says twist. I thought that's...
That's the M. Night Shyamalan character from Robot Chicken.
All right.
What does Tweez?
All right, wrong reference there.
He's definitely very different than...
I can see Jar Jar Binks saying twist, though.
Ooh, he's a twist.
Yeah, all right.
Okie day.
So, Marvel announces a new Hulk book. Al Ewing, Joe Bennett, Amadeus Cho has been the Hulk for a while. Now Bruce Banner is going to be the Hulk. But they're going with a new little spin here, Jerry. They're playing it as a horror comic called The Immortal Hulk. You're a big fan of horror comics in general. They want him to be a hero that just strikes at night. Does that sound like it's going to work as a horror comic at all, or is this just a gimmick?
They want him to do what? To strike at night?
Yeah, okay. It's the weirdest thing.
Who is he
He's
striking?
still a hero.
Like-
All right, so he's still a hero.
Right, okay.
But
So he fights crime at night, so he's kind of more
vigilante?
frightening?
I guess, yeah.
Could
The
be.
cover is awesome because Alex Ross is doing the cover, and the cover to the number 1 is like a gravestone. Bruce Banner lives, and just coming out of the gravestone is this awesome, I should say, incredible now Hulk. And Bruce Banner hasn't been this character for a long time. And you're seeing with the Marvel Fresh Start, there a lot of the getting back to their roots. But Jerry, it sounds like it's a really weird message with this book. Like, it's a horror comic, but he's a hero, but he's a hero who only fights crime at night. And I mean, does this and I'm like, it may sound like I'm just doing a terrible job of explaining the premise, but no, I'm telling you about what Marvel told us. Does this sound weird to you?
I would this would be something where I would want to see like a like a 5 or 6 page preview or something to figure out what the tone of it is. Now, if they tried to mix the tone of the Hulk, or at least the character of the Hulk, with again, something kind of like out of an old EC Comics or Tales from the Crypt, that would be kind of interesting. Sort of that sensationalist vibe going on. I could see that being successful, especially if it was a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I don't know if they're trying to do, hardcore
horror
or not. Okay. I mean, I'd like to see about a 5 or 6...
you can. It's on...
5 or 6 page
It's on
preview.
CBR.com right now. If you can go check it out. So, like, the scene they show, and it's beautiful, beautiful artwork by Joe Bennett, is it's basically, very generic scene. Somebody's sticking up a convenience store or something. And this Hulk looks bigger than previous Hulks. And everybody draws him in different scale. But he looks...
Yeah, he's always different
Yeah,
size.
he looks bigger than previous Hulks. But this is Hulk, like, okay, he's so big... His arms just reach through the front windows, and you see glass shattering, and it's just like he pulls this guy, the robber, away, and it looks really cool. It's going to be about execution, and I think Al Ewing can do it. It's like, to me, Marvel right now is they want to get back to classic storytelling, but they want to put a new spin on it, too. It's not necessarily like Rebirth, where they're just gun-ho and embrace classic storytelling. So, a lot of stuff coming out with this Marvel Fresh Start. Jerry, I'm really glad you joined us for these last the big two epic news items here, because they're right up your alley, and I know you can see where we're going with this.
I can.
So it's going to be Batgirl and Luke Skywalker, the most Jerry Reed things ever besides action figures and barbecue. So Joss Whedon drops out of Batgirl. This was a big deal. Whedon's wife revealed that he was cheating on her and had treated her like crap. And there was a Whedon fan site, Whedonverse or something, that had been covering Joss since Buffy, and they shut down over this. They were so distraught. So you have that end of it. And then after Josh walks out, you have a lot of female creators like Gail Simone saying she's got a script that she could write. She's got the story in her head. She just got to, really touch it up and spend some time, translating it into a screenplay. And then you have, after all this, WB saying this film's no longer a priority. I mean, Jerry, once again, WB, DC, film-wise, is at it again, letting us down. What are your thoughts on all this?
I absolutely see the whole Joss Whedon stepping down thing. I mean, the publicity around him is not great right now for... especially helming a female character, a character with a long history of feminist interpretations and sort of, again, I think we touched on this a little bit last time, but Batgirl, I mean, she starts off early on in some ways with some very stereotypical storylines you would think of, but pretty quickly you realize she became a spokesperson for some things in the women's liberation movement. She was a spokeswoman for equal pay. She was a spokeswoman for the I think the American Library Association. I mean, in a lot of ways. So Batgirl has this history, and at this point, with all the allegations and the things that have come up, plus the fact that Justice League was not a success. I enjoyed the movie. I liked Justice League. But, I mean, we have to be honest, things did not work out for that film.
Yeah.
Whether it was the transition between Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon, whatever happened there, it's completely understandable why he is separating from this project, or why Warner has separated him from this project. I think I have a big problem, the fact that they're saying this film is no longer a priority.
It seems like now is the time to make it a priority with the success of Wonder Woman and Black Panther, that people want to see different representation in their superheroes on screen, right?
I think Batgirl could be a film, and I'm not just saying this as a massive Batgirl fan, but I'm saying I really think Batgirl could be a film that would have that same level of success, especially if they used various things. The Batgirl of Burnside, you might call it a soft reboot of the character in a way. I mean, that has really been popular with Batgirl in sort of a trendy city with a pretty diverse cast. You could do something with, Batgirl and Oracle. Again, a lot of people criticize the New 52 for... As many people criticize the New 52 for putting Batgirl, taking Batgirl out of the wheelchair, as people criticized her originally for being put in a wheelchair. But there was an interesting background story about her still coming to terms and dealing with the fact that she didn't understand, why she was healed, why she was able to, come out of the wheelchair, out of her accident. I mean, again, you could have some very interesting, fascinating
empowering things.
The Batgirl,
empowering things.
Yes. There's been so much going on there, and again, I mean, Gail Simone is a great person. She has such a history with this character, and understanding how to write Barbara Gordon. And so it seems like the right time. A Batgirl film could be a great film where you could bring in some of these other characters, but you don't have to make their stories dependent on anything else. Like, you could bring in, a couple Gotham residents. You could conceivably have a, cameo from somebody else that you want to introduce. Some characters like Black Canary or Huntress or Spoiler or anybody. But you still can have her do her own thing, and it doesn't have to be a massive spectacle of a film.
Yeah, no, I agree with
again,
that.
Batgirl stories are rarely like these world, the whole world's at stake. I mean, they're usually kind of a smaller affair, a more intimate movie, and I think that's a great direction for DC to go, and I think they really need to reprioritize some of these characters that have interesting stories to tell. And I don't know, was it Mark Miller? Mark Miller, I think, recently was talking about why he thought Marvel movies were resonating more with fans than DC movies. And you remember what he said?
Yeah, Abby and I actually bring this up in our Black Panther review, which was recorded before.
Oh, good,
this.
okay.
So, this is very relevant to what we will talk about later on in this podcast. But they're too mythological. They're not grounded. They're not as relatable, right? Aside from Batman. That's what he said. Now, this is a perfect opportunity to go in the direction of relatability with Barbara Gordon. I think that's where you're going.
And I think he brings up a big point about a lot of the DC characters can be so powerful as well that there's not even really a sense of danger either. They're either too mythological, or it seems like danger's not really a big threat to them. I mean, at any point in Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman's a great movie, but at any point in Wonder Woman, does Wonder Woman seem even like she's really, truly in danger? Maybe during the fight with Ares, but that's about it.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of characters. I think that's why Arrow has been so successful. Again, I mean, I know Arrow, you know, some people think Arrow's kind of a melodramatic or whatnot, but Oliver Queen is a character that can be harmed, and a lot of people seem to, you know, relate to aspects of the character. But I think Batgirl is one of those characters that would be a great direction for DC to go in at this point. I mean, I really think they need to make each of their movies stand out, to feel very different, and maybe leave the world building alone, or leave it as a very sort of, you know, it's just kind of on the borders of their films.
I think they
versus being a priority.
They need to decide, number one, the tone they want to go for, and I don't think it's ultra dark because that didn't work for them. I think it could have worked if they had fully embraced it. That's a story we've discussed many times on this podcast.
Yeah.
I think they need to pick 4 to 5 characters. Let's say 5. I think they need to pick 3 that are like the A-list, like guaranteed almost to succeed. So I would go with Batman and Wonder Woman. And then I would pick one more. Maybe you go with the Flash, okay, since you haven't went there yet. And then pick 2 smaller, more relatable characters like Batgirl, for example, that can be a more ground-level superhero-type story. Kind of like the Spider-Man Homecoming, right? You have these massive threads, but he is the hero of Queens. He's not the hero even of all of New York, because that's the headquarters for the Avengers. So, and then you let those 5 movies play out. You can subtly, you know, hint that this is the same universe, of course. And if I was them, you know, when I would do this, I would do this after Flashpoint. Go ahead, release Aquaman, release Flashpoint, reset your timeline with Flashpoint, and then focus, all right, we picking 5 characters, 5 movies. If this works, then our world is built. If not, then maybe we have 3 or 4 really good solo movies.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that would be a way to go. I mean, they also almost, and I know this isn't the business way to go, they need to put blinders on and completely ignore Marvel. I mean, trying to say you want to be like the MCU or you want to be like Marvel, that's like, you know, Cam Newton saying he's Tom Brady. I mean, Cam Newton's really good. I love him. He's an athletic freak, but he's not as good as the greatest of all time. I know that's a sports reference, Jerry. But you don't have to...
Yeah. No, I get the reference.
But you don't have to... You don't have to be the standard to be successful, to be liked, right? And that's the problem. They're comparing themselves to the standard.
Yeah. If I were working with DC Films right now, I mean, obviously I would fast track a Batgirl film and a Batwoman film. And a Red Hood and the Outlaws, you know, you could see where
Bat
this is
Family.
going.
When you talked about this on the podcast before, Batman's your most successful character, so why not fully embrace parts of his story and universe that we haven't seen? I mean,
you really could do a variety of films with the Bat Family that would feel unique, but would still embrace something that is proven already to be popular. I would focus on a Bat Family series of films that have their very own tone. Again, a Batgirl movie is kind of fun. I mean, she's kind of funky and modern, super intelligent, whereas Red Hood is kind of more conflicted. He's reckless. That's kind of more your balls to the wall action.
That's your Winter Soldier kind of in a way.
Yeah. But, Batwoman is a bit more horror themed. She's a bit more driven. You know, she's a bit more with a tortured past than some of the Bat Family members have. But I would also focus on, I think DC really needs to look at some of their, you might say their supernatural, their mystical characters again. We keep hearing about this Justice League Dark film. It gets thrown around every so many years. But again, I think that's an area of superhero movies that there's not a whole lot of. Now, we have Hellboy coming out here fairly soon. But I think with horror films, if you did it, you could have an overlap between those horror audiences and superhero audiences if DC would focus on some of these characters like Constantine, the Spectre, Zatanna, Etrigan. Yeah. You could do some really cool stuff with a lot of these characters. And I feel like sometimes DC is really trying to push, their top characters when maybe they need to. It might sound counterintuitive, but let's push some of these B characters for a while. Now, let's try some C characters and see what happens. They need to
launch those on the back of Batman, though. Batman's a layup, man. Like, do that, have a badass Batman movie, and springboard from there into your Zatannas of the world.
Yeah, and maybe do a film with Batman where, again, I think they need to do a film with Batman where Batman is in his prime and other characters are established.
Yeah.
I think people would be ready for this at that point. Again, the trend with superhero movies is, we have to do a movie to establish characters. I think we could go into a Batman film and already have a couple Robins established, or Nightwing established, or Batgirl established. We don't have to necessarily do an Origins film.
Yeah. I agree with it. It's got to be different than Marvel, but at this point, I don't know how much risk they'll be willing to take. But Batman's, he's their golden goose there. At least they could always fall back on him. But Jerry, speaking of something that another company, Disney, their rival, can fall back on, that's Star Wars. And one of the big news stories that sprung up this week is coming from the Last Jedi novelization, which I know you had pre-ordered. This coming out March 6th. And
yeah, which is so strange. This is the first Star Wars novelization that I can remember that was not released when the film was released.
I know, and it makes you wonder what's in here that they didn't want us to know when Last Jedi come out. And the big news is it's going to start out with kind of a prologue, some type of reflection from Luke Skywalker, some internal dialogue that references him having a wife. Now, I assume this won't be Mara Jade like in the EU, but does this news come as a surprise to you that we're going to get that info in the novelization?
We knew there was going to be some stuff in here that was not shown in the film and wasn't touched on. I have already heard a couple different areas of speculation on this. I don't know how much into spoilers we want to go, because I was actually pretty mad that a Star Wars fan site just put right out there, Last Jedi novelization reveals that so-and-so is Luke's wife. And I was like, okay, I would have liked to have read that, versus I thought that was a pretty big spoiler.
Let's say spoilers here, and you can fast forward for the next 5 minutes of the pod if you don't want to hear this. Who did they say? Who's the wife, Jerry, since you know it already?
It's Cammy, she is actually in the deleted scenes from A New Hope.
Now say that again.
She's one
say
of the
that
folks.
You cut out. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Cammy Marstrap is the current name. Although I've heard people throw around the name Cammy Lonesner, which is another character. So these are characters in the original Star Wars novel, and they are characters in the deleted scenes from A New Hope. That these are the folks who were hanging out at Tosche Station. And yes, Hasbro has made an action figure of her in the past. So she's somebody that Luke grew up with. She's somebody that lived on Tatooine. You get the idea she's probably a little older than Luke, that he's had a crush on her. So some of the speculation is this is Luke thinking about what his life may have been like if things had been normal.
That sounds right.
Or if things had went well. Or he's kind of imagining the different possibilities that may have happened instead of him now, being on the island of Octo alone and by himself.
And that makes sense because for them to just, display this elaborate backstory that he would wind up going back home to marry this girl makes absolutely no sense. I mean, then again, you never know. Star Wars has subverted expectations since Last Jedi.
Maybe that's what happens. Everybody wonders what happens to Luke between Return of the Jedi and the End of the Force Awakens. Marriage. That's what happens to him.
No, but I mean.
That's why he's bitter and angry. I'm just kidding. My wife's probably
these novelizations are, they're great. They fill in the gaps. To me, the best one. Now I haven't read Force Awakens one, but the one I liked was the Revenge of the Sith one because it really gets you into Anakin's head. It makes that a better
Revenge
movie.
of the Sith is really good. The other one that is fantastic is Rogue One. Rogue One has so much internal struggle and the thought process of Jyn Erso. It has so much background information on, her family. And, there was already a really good prequel novel, Catalyst, which was a Rogue One prequel. And Rogue One really helps to connect a lot of stuff, too. So I'm really curious to see how this book is... what it adds to the film experience.
Yeah, me too. I'll be interested to hear what you say about it. I probably won't read it, but you always help me fill in those gaps because you read all this stuff. Real quick, one last bit of epic news, then we'll let you get into something you've been checking out since you joined us late. In with some collecting news, Mondo revealed their 1/6 scale Batman the Animated Series figure that's retailing for $125, and then you get a deluxe version of that with the extra sculpt for $150, and I think a few extra accessories. So very reasonable price for a figure sculpted this well at that scale. Jerry,
it's pretty cool
Did you
looking.
get a chance to see it?
I did. It kind of reminds me of a larger version of the DC Collectibles figure. It's got even like the extra flowing capes and stuff. This one has like shading on it though, to kind of give it more of the animated look, which is something that DC Collectibles didn't put on their version.
It does, and they had some quality control problems with some of their Turtles figures that they released with the belts and stuff. So yeah,
Did they?
Yeah.
Okay. It
wasn't like an epidemic, but I saw some people like Pixel Dan and stuff talking about it. So it's just, I hope they get it right with this. I know this is they made that transition from posters to stuff like this, and if they hit this out of the park, like if this becomes the definitive, Batman the Animated Series collectible, which I'm not saying it will, but you never know. In particular in this scale, because we really haven't had much at this scale with Batman the Animated Series. I think it could be a big thing for them, collectible-wise. But
yeah,
you can pre-order that now at mondotees.com and bigbadtoystore.com.
It does seem pretty reasonable. I mean, I think the price is pretty reasonable, too, for a 1/6 scale articulated
Especially
figure. That's
the
not
non-deluxe for $125, then like $12 shipping, I think. So $4 if you order it from Big Bad. But all right, Jerry, I know you joined.
Hey, one other action figure news. I don't know if you've heard this rumor yet. Last time when we did our Toy Fair 2018 podcast, we looked at some of the what are they calling them? The 10th anniversary of the Marvel Cinematic Universe figures that Hasbro is putting out.
Yeah.
Have you heard the rumor about who a Build-A-Figure might be between about 3 or 4 of those 2-packs?
Stan Lee, Excelsior.
Stan Lee. Yeah, it seems like we may be getting a Stan Lee Build-A-Figure, which is pretty cool considering he's been in, all the Marvel movies.
Yeah, and I think that's going to start, like, the leg is in the Everett Ross and Killmonger 2-pack.
Yeah. Hey, don't spoil it for me because I haven't seen it yet, but is he in Black Panther?
Stan Lee? Yeah, of course, he's in there.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. So.
And I saw some other ones from that line, like I saw the Tony Stark figure and the Mark I figure from Iron Man 1. So, I mean, that 10-year thing's going to be huge for Hasbro, it looks like.
The Winter, what's his name?
Winter Soldier.
Yeah, what's the guy's
Bucky
name?
Barnes, Sebastian Stan.
Sebastian. I want to say Sebastian Shaw, but that's the guy who played the original Anakin Skywalker in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Sebastian Stan. He showed off the Winter Soldier figure. I think earlier today.
Looks
or
good.
Late yesterday. Yeah.
Jerry, is there anything you've been
All right,
checking
Brad.
out?
Oh man, is there anything I've been checking out? Yes. 2 things I've been checking out. Both of them old. Both of them from the 80s. I don't do anything new, Brad.
I know.
I'm old. I just retread the same things over and over again. So, no, one of them is actually pretty new. So, the thing that I've been checking out that's old, and I actually recorded a solo one-man podcast about it. I'm going to send it to you to listen to, see what you think about it. Maybe everybody else will be interested in hearing it as well. But I just read Legends, which is a DC crossover event from 1986 and early 1987. It was the first crossover that came out after Crisis on Infinite Earths. It's a pretty simple story. It's only 6 issues. There actually were, I think about 21 or 22 tie-in issues. But I just checked this out. I read it actually a couple times, so that I could be ready to do sort of a podcast on the book. So it's pretty cool. John Ostrander is sort of the plotter, but Len Wein, creator and co-creator of Wolverine, Swamp Thing, Storm, Colossus, Lucius Fox, lots of people, are the writing team behind it, but the art is by John Byrne.
Oh yeah, legendary.
So just has a great, very classic, mid-80s look to it, which is one of my favorite periods for DC. I mean, I just love the look of the characters during that period. But have you ever read Legends? Are you familiar with it at all?
I never have.
So at this point, I think the most famous thing about Legends is that it's the first appearance of the modern Suicide Squad. This is the first appearance of Amanda Waller in this book, in this series. And, she brings back Colonel Rick Flag, who's the son of the original, World War II era Rick Flag, but to start Task Force X. So when DC re-released this in a 30th anniversary version in 2016, they put a big banner across the top that says, featuring the Suicide Squad's first appearance. So at this point, I guess that's probably what most people would remember this book for, if they remember it at all.
So that follows
Story-wise,
like the Joel Ostrander, where they introduced Suicide Squad for the first time, right? Okay.
Yes, this is the first time they introduced Suicide Squad. Task Force X. Now there was a World War II Suicide Squad. There was a World War II Suicide Squad that was featured in some issues, I think, of The Brave and the Bold in the late 50s through the early 60s, but this is the Task Force X that we think of, where it's, criminals and various kind of, outsiders and stuff who are brought together, and, some of them willingly, some of them against their will. But it's a pretty cool book. It uses a lot of the Kirby characters. Darkseid is sort of the primary antagonist. He's fed up with this idea of, legends and heroes, and finds them to be too problematic and too chaotic. So he sends some of his minions, Dr. Bedlam and Glorious Godfrey, to start a whole campaign turning people against the superheroes. And that's kind of the thing, is the superheroes are having to fight against public opinion. Here's something I think you will find funny about the book. This book came out, I think the first issue was in late 86. So it was actually running at the same time as Watchmen.
That's weird.
So that's kind of interesting. The thing that's funny, though, is that Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns came out during the summer of 86.
What a time.
Legends comes out.
What a time for DC. Holy shit.
Absolutely. Crisis had just finished. Then here comes The Dark Knight Returns, and then here comes, Watchmen. But anyways, so you know that Ronald Reagan is clearly a character in The Dark Knight Returns. Ronald Reagan is a character in Legends as well. He is struggling with a decision to instate an executive order that will stop superhero activity, will ban superhero activity because of public opinion turning against him, and he's using Superman as kind of his counsel. And so Superman is kind of the counselor to Ronald Reagan in this book. They never call him Ronald Reagan in this book, but I was just reading earlier today the Volume 2 omnibus of Batman and the Outsiders, which is pre-Crisis, and there's one at the 1984 Summer Olympics where Batman and the Outsiders have to stop Maxie Zeus's gang of the New Olympians, and I mean they totally call him President Reagan. So Ronald Reagan had a long career showing up in DC Comics. But it's interesting, with Frank Miller's depiction of Reagan, we have this very different, kind of an all-shucks character, but who clearly has this very extreme ideology and uses Superman as kind of this tool of the state to enforce the state's will, whereas in Len Wein and John Ostrander's Legends, which was a more mainstream book to an extent, Reagan is very much relying on Superman as a confidant and sort of asking Superman for his counsel in a legitimate way. So, two interesting depictions of Reagan in DC Comics. Reagan's relationship with Superman within 6 months of each other. I thought you as a history teacher may find that fascinating.
I love talking about Reagan too, and he even brought Trump into the Dark Knight Master Race. I mean, Miller's very
absolutely
very political, and Trump could use Superman's counsel a lot more than Ronald Reagan. I can promise you that. But what's the other thing you were checking out, Jerry?
Oh, the other thing I'm checking out is I just got in the latest series of Mattel's DC Comics Multiverse action figures. Most of them are actually sitting on my desk right now. I reviewed Batwoman earlier this week. Mattel has definitely made a step up with this series. They've gone back and forth on their quality. They'll release some decent figures and some figures that are less than good. The Justice League line overall was not very impressive.
No, it was not.
But this was a pretty good series. Clayface is the Build-A-Figure, which, I mean, anytime you have a Batman-themed character as a Build-A-Figure, that's a way to generate some popularity. Batwoman was pretty good. Again, their head sculpts and their articulations definitely not quite up to definitely not up to Marvel Legends levels. But it's nice to see them moving forward. Batwoman was a pretty good figure. Jessica Cruz is a really good
I've heard
figure.
a lot about her
in this
online.
line.
People seem to be really psyched about her in collecting communities, and she's just an awesome character in general.
Absolutely. Yeah, she's really cool. She kind of has these little green, like, I'm going to call them like energy crackles and stuff that you can kind of, they remind me of like vines that you'd see with a Poison Ivy figure, but you can put them over her arms. I really didn't have any luck getting them over her legs. They're just too out of whack. The energy crackles, not her legs. But again, it's a pretty good series. You have a all-star Batman Two-Face. So Two-Face in the red jacket from the first volume of All-Star Batman. There's a Rebirth Superman, and then there's also a TV Martian Manhunter from Supergirl, which I haven't watched, but he is nice. He's a nice looking figure, so I was pretty impressed.
So check out the Build-A-Figure Clayface DC Universe Mattel line right now. I'm sure you can pre-order some of those at Amazon and BigBadToyStore.com.
Yeah, I got mine from Big Bad, and I think they're shipping right now.
And Legend,
so.
I'm sure you got from Amazon, right? Or Legends, I should say.
Yeah, I picked up Legends from Amazon.
Yeah, so check those out if you want to. So, Moving from DC to Marvel, let's get into our review of Ryan Coogler's Black Panther.
Tell me something. What do you know about Wakanda?
It's a third world country.
Textiles, shepherds, cool outfits, all front. Explorers have searched for it. Called it El Dorado. They looked for it in South America. But it was in Africa the whole time. I'm the only one who's seen it. And made it out alive. I can see you.
The world is changing. Soon, there will only be the conquered and the conquerors.
Step into the spotlight.
You are a good man
Step into the spotlight.
with a good heart. And it's hard for a good man to be a king.
That was from the trailer of Ryan Coogler's latest entry into the MCU, The Black Panther. Before we get started with our featured review on this edition of the Confirmed Epic Podcast, let's go ahead and get into a few stats from the film. Again, this film was directed by Ryan Coogler, who directed such films as Creed and Fruitvale Station. It's produced, of course, by the great Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios, aka Disney. It stars Chadwick Boseman, who made his debut as T'Challa in Captain America Civil War back in 2016. It stars Michael B. Jordan, Lupita Nyong'o, Forrest Whitaker, Angela Bassett, Andy Serkis, Daniel Kaluuya, who of course is from last year's Best Picture nomination, Get Out. Danani Guerrera, who plays Michonne on The Walking Dead. Its soundtrack and music was by Kendrick Lamar and The Weeknd, among other artists. This film sits at 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, the highest rated superhero film of all time, even above films like The Dark Knight and the original Iron Man. As far as the box office is concerned, this made $202 million opening weekend, which is fifth best all time. Now, if you include the President's Day, because it did come out President's Day weekend, you can go ahead and add that up to $235 million. And this is all on a $200 million budget. This film had a runtime of 135 minutes, although it did not feel like that at all. You may not have figured it out by now, but unfortunately Jerry Barbecue 17 did not see Black Panther. So instead, I have joining me tonight my lovely wife Abby, who is sporting a very sexy Confirmed Epic Podcast hoodie, red hoodie, which you can get at tpublic.com/user/TheRealBradBell. But joining me for the first time ever on the podcast is our beautiful baby daughter, Harper Jane Bell. Harper, how does it feel to be on the podcast?
She's kicking.
She's kicking, so she's excited. She's a natural podcaster, just like her father, the real Brad Bell. But this is an exciting moment because it's the first time in a long time, the first time since we did our Dark Knight special last summer, that my lovely wife Abby is joining the show. And we went and saw Black Panther about 2 weekends ago now. Abby, how did you feel about the film? Just initial impressions walking out.
Oh, I loved it. Well, I think it's like one of my favorite films that Marvel has done. Probably the only one that will Cap.
Which movies. Cap do you like the best? Do you like the original, don't you?
Yeah, but you don't agree with me on that one. But I do like the original one.
Why do you like the original first?
Because it's his like origin. It tells his origin. You know how I am about their origin stories.
But some people would argue that origin stories are the most boring superhero
okay, so
films.
look at me. I don't know anything really about the Marvel characters.
Well, you know what you have heard from me, but as far as experiences,
Yeah. Because everybody knew DC characters growing up. But not Marvel. I didn't know who Cap was. I didn't know who... Well, I've heard of them, but I didn't know, where they came from, what their story is. Kind of same with Wolverine and everything else.
So, I want to ask you a quick question before we dive into Black Panther. It was a big thing going on the internet this week. Mark Millar, who wrote the original Civil War comic, wrote the Kick-Ass comic, said that DC characters don't work in film because this day and age, this postmodern world, they're too mythological. They're too grand in scale. Do you agree with that? Do you think that DC characters just haven't worked outside of Batman? Do you think they ever will work, though?
You're asking the wrong person. Yeah, Superman and Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
They're just, Well, with Superman, what's his only weakness? Kryptonite?
That's right.
How is he beatable?
Kryptonite, that's it.
Yeah, that's boring.
Or unless he's under a red sun, they have it. He gets his power from a yellow sun, so if there's a red sun, he loses power.
Yeah, I love Superman, but it's still, boring because they're kind of...
Too powerful?
you said, too mythological and... too unbeatable.
They're not relatable as much.
Their villains are not as good either.
Well, except Batman's villains. He has
but Batman's a man. He's mortal.
Yeah.
He doesn't have superpowers. He's just super rich, has all these cool creations that help him portray Batman
and fight the war on crime in Gotham. Speaking of people that are super rich, Black Panther's pretty well off considering he is the king of Wakanda, the fictional African nation, which it is not real. There's some people on the internet who think that was a real country in Africa, and if you didn't know, just the history teacher coming out at me, Africa isn't a country, it's a continent, okay? So I'm not trying to sound like a smart ass. Just throwing that out there. Of course, Abby knows that. She's very intelligent. She's smarter than I am.
Oh, I'm so smart.
You are. You're smarter in a different kind of way. I'm more smart. I'm more intelligent in an analytical way, but when it comes to math and science and application, you're good at that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's something they're good at on Wakanda. So, did you have any experience with the Black Panther character heading into this film?
Oh, yeah, because he was in Civil War, but that was it.
What did you think about him in Civil War?
I liked him in Civil War. I thought he was cool.
Did you ever think he could be as cool as he wound up being in this movie, though?
Yeah, to be honest.
Okay, then. All right. I didn't know. There's a lot I liked about Chadwick
Boseman. I didn't think Ant-Man was going to be cool, but I liked his movie. Yeah. But Black Panther, I thought this was going to be a good movie going in. That's why I wanted to see it so bad.
And I was, excited about Chadwick Boseman's portrayal and stuff.
I know, and I found out he's from South Carolina.
That's crazy.
Our cousins to the south.
Yeah. From the
we're from
Hollywood foothills of North Carolina.
Yeah.
From the sand hills of South Carolina.
I was because his accent is so good. I was kind of floored that he was from South Carolina.
What part of South Carolina
Anderson.
Is he from? Do you know? Okay, well, that's not far from here at all.
No.
What's that, an hour and a half from where we live?
Mm-hmm.
We live about 20 minutes south of Charlotte here.
We're close to Rock Hill, South Carolina.
Yeah, we're really close to
Lake
that.
Wiley.
All right, enough about the geography of the great state of South Carolina. It's arguably, definitely, not arguable maybe. So let me ask you this. I'll say this. First of all, my experience with the Black Panther character, before we dive deeper into this, is there was an Avengers cartoon that used to come on Disney XD. It's called Avengers Assemble, and he was freaking awesome on that show. I've read some of his comics, hit or miss. I read some of the Ta-Nehisi Coates run that just came out about a year and a half ago. It was very dense, very political thriller type, and there's some of that in this movie, but there's also a lot of fun and exciting story beats in this movie as well. So, I was more familiar than you were, but I was not as big of a Marvel fanboy as I was growing up. He's definitely one of my lesser known characters, but I'm glad this movie kind of changed my perspective on that. Here's the big thing, though. This movie's massive. Like, everybody's seen this movie. And they're talking about, like, all my kids in my classes have seen this movie. You're seeing Black Panther shirts out at places like Target.
You're wearing one right now.
I'm wearing one right now. It didn't come from Target, okay? It was although no disrespect to Target, it was the Heroes Convention shirt from 2016 when Ta-Nehisi Coates was there, the big Black Panther writer. So it was a cool shirt from that convention. But and I did wear this to the movie. Like, you see the NBA players, I'm seeing kids at school do that little cross thing they have, that little greeting.
Yeah.
Why do you think? First of all, have you seen this around like I have, just how big this thing is?
Well.
Like on social media and just out and about?
Oh, yeah. It's huge on social media.
Why do you think it's... Because this has almost transcended a movie. It's like a cultural phenomenon.
Well,
why do you think that's the case?
Because it's the first time there's been a huge black superhero in the spotlight.
And there's been black superheroes, I mean, but you had Spawn, he's a black superhero. You had Blade, Wesley Snipes' Blade. I love those movies. Mm-hmm. But, like, I don't know if mainstream's the right word, because Blade was pretty mainstream, but superheroes are bigger now than they ever have been, probably bigger than they ever will be. So now it was time for an African-American, a black superhero to step up into that spotlight. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's just something that's had a big impact, just like Wonder Woman did for women last summer.
Yeah.
So, and you definitely felt that. So we're going to start out spoiler-free, just some basic stuff on the film, our initial impressions on the film, and just like always, we'll roll the spoiler reel forward, and we'll talk more nitty-gritty about Black Panther. So let's get started here. Initial impressions. So when you walked out of the theater, were you blown away? Did you just kind of like it? Like, how did you feel?
I won't say I felt the same way I did when I left Wonder Woman, but it was pretty similar. Not as, I don't know. I loved it. I liked the whole movie. I liked the characters a lot. I like how they portrayed Lupita's character, his sister. I don't know, the music in it. There was a lot I liked about it. I liked it more than Spider-Man. Which is saying something.
And Spider-Man's like one of your favorite Marvel characters growing up, right?
Right.
So if I would have told you going into both those movies that you're going to like Black Panther more than Spider-Man Homecoming, would you have been surprised I told you that?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people were. This isn't just a good superhero movie, right?
No,
Abby?
Yeah. I think it could stand alone.
Yeah, if there was no MCU.
Right. I think it's a good standalone superhero movie.
And not just superhero movie. This is a good movie, period.
Right.
And like, if this was like the 89 Batman or the 78 Superman, where they weren't planning to do any universe or world building with Black Panther, of course they are, especially the money that this made. There's going to be tons of sequels, I'm sure. Like you said, that's a very good point. This movie could stand alone.
Well, it made you feel all kinds of emotions in it because, you know, it has the family ties. And so, I don't know, makes you feel happy, sad, emotional. I don't know.
And it does that from the get-go. I don't want to get too spoiler here, but the movie doesn't open up how you think it does. It opens up in Oakland, and you're going to be in a flashback. I know a lot of Marvel movies.
Yeah, you're kind of like, where
that.
are we going from here? Like, you don't expect it to start out like that.
Because you expect just to be thrown into the action.
Yeah, in Wakanda. And
which we get there.
Yeah.
And then Black Panther kicking all kinds of ass, but that's not how the movie
But
reels
it kind
you
of
in.
opens up the villain's story, but you don't know that right away.
Yeah, they do a good job of setting up the backstory from an emotional standpoint. We can talk more about that in spoilers. Then they introduce Michael B. Jordan's character, Eric Killmonger. We both love Michael B. Jordan.
Oh, yeah.
What have we been watching Michael B. Jordan on lately?
It sounds so lame.
No, I talked about it on this podcast before. It's awesome. What is it, Abby?
Creed. No, I'm kidding.
No, that would be cool. Abby hadn't watched Creed
I want
yet.
to now, though.
Go ahead.
Parenthood. We sound so old.
Parenthood, which is a great show on NBC. Well, it's on Netflix now. It's
He was in a few episodes.
he's in like a season and a half. He played the oldest daughter's boyfriend. You could, like, on this show, I mean, there's some good TV actors on this show. Craig T. Nelson, Dax Shepard, Peter Krause, which is not Krause. He pronounces it Krause, which is crazy. But as good as these TV actors are, like, you could tell he was a movie actor. He was going to be bigger than any of these people were. And now he is. Like, I think with this performance, if Creed didn't do it, like, he's A-list now. He is one of the biggest actors
This
in
movie
Hollywood.
has definitely thrown him, if he wasn't before. People, like, can't get enough of him now.
Yeah, and he's
like, females love him because he's obviously good looking.
Guys want to be him.
Yeah. I mean, he's a good villain. He plays Killmonger really well.
Yes, he does. And that's one of the things the Marvel movies have struggled with was the villains. But that's, besides Loki, of course. But that's definitely not the case here. All right, Abby, there was a lot of cool tech in this film. His sister, Shuri, who I would almost describe as like...
Spider-Man.
No, not Spider-Man.
She's techie, scientific, smart.
But cool, in a cool way.
Yeah.
Yeah, not like the nerdy techie type. Like, my best description of her would be like, she's the M to his James Bond. I know you don't watch James Bond, Abby, but M gives Bond all of his gadgets and stuff. And that's what she does, but she's his sister, so there's that family element there, so it makes that an even, deeper character arc between those two. Just the way they joke around, like, it feels legit, like they feel like siblings.
It feels authentic.
Yeah,
Except they're a little nicer than
than real siblings. But they jab at each other, a little bit. So she comes up with things, for example... She has this thing that you can throw on a car, and it allows her to remote pilot a car from back in Wakanda.
Yeah, I thought that was really creative. I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, it was cool. And just like her CG, how she designs stuff in her lab, like, it went for something kind of like they were going for in Superman's ship on Man of Steel.
Oh, Lord.
But this looked a lot cooler, and a
lot more well thought out.
Yeah, and I knew her from the comics, but she actually becomes Black Panther, Abby.
Oh.
Yeah, so who knows if that ever happens in these movies, but I knew a little bit about her.
Well, I just figured out we're talking about Black Panther in our Panther room.
Yeah. We are podcasting from a place in our house that we never have. First of all, the podcasting room became Harper's room.
Yeah. Well, that was a smaller room, and, this room's nice. I like this room. This room is going to stay.
Yeah, and then we have this other room. We obviously live right outside of Charlotte. We're huge Panthers fans. It's kind of like my man cave, but Abby loves football too, so I wouldn't just call it a man cave.
Nah, we both love this room.
And I've been podcasting, in the bedroom and stuff in there. We moved the desk, but I'm going to be podcasting late tonight because we're actually recording, even though this chronologically, when you're listening to the podcast, is after the section with Jerry with news and checking out. We actually recorded this before. We had planned to have Amos on the podcast, but he had a really rough day at work, so we're thinking about you, Amos, and Abby was gracious enough to step in. So thank you, Abby, for stepping in. All right, here's a big criticism of this movie. It is the CG, in particular in the fight scenes and the heavy action scenes. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. The way that T'Challa, Black Panther, looks in the Korea shots when they go to South Korea and he's jumping on the cars. There's a lot of criticism from around the internet and film critic circles that it just looks too rubbery, like it looks too computer generated. Like, did that pull you out of the film?
I didn't think so. No.
You didn't notice that?
No.
I did, kind of. It's like, I don't know why the CG in these movies looks worse than CG did in Spider-Man 2 or CG did in the first Iron Man. And I'm not talking about all CG. It's just when the character's doing things obviously a real person couldn't do.
Yeah.
So they have to, go in and fill in the effects from, computer generation. And I don't know, it didn't take me out of the film, but I don't. A lot of people think from a technical standpoint, like this movie's not that well done. Not costume design, because costume's phenomenal, set design's phenomenal. But like from the way that a lot of the scenes were shot, in particular the action scenes, people think it didn't flow well. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. Did you notice any of that?
No, especially that car scene in Korea. I thought that was pretty good. I mean, probably the one where he's fighting Killmonger, where they fall with the vibranium train.
Oh, yeah, don't get too spoiler.
Yeah,
there.
that part was probably, I don't know.
That was, you could tell.
Yeah, you could tell in that part. But
they were on green screen probably.
Yeah.
What about his suit? Did you think his suit looked good?
Yeah.
Because she gives him a new suit in this one. It's not the suit. At the beginning, he has the suit he had in Civil War. Then Shuri, his sister, gives him the suit that has... The other suit was made of vibranium. This one is too. But this suit has trace. It lights up.
It absorbs energy.
That's why. See, I didn't even remember that, Abby. I honest to God didn't. So that's why you're on
So the more
podcast.
energy you put towards him, the more it builds up and he
gets stronger.
Which I thought was another cool thing.
Yeah, and when that suit lit up at night with the purple traces of vibranium,
yeah,
I mean, it looked really cool. Like, it looked just as cool as any of the Iron Man suits.
It really did.
And that's the thing about this movie is it's a big genre mashup. Like I told Abby, it took me a while to digest this movie and kind of think how I felt about it, because it felt like so many things mixed together. I mentioned James Bond. There's like a casino fight
Lion
scene.
King.
Abby says
with the
Lion
father
King.
and the son.
Yeah, especially when... if you watch Civil War, his father's dead, but he has kind of spiritual visions of his father. It does kind of remind you of Simba and Mufasa. Yeah, definitely. There's some Iron Man in there, as we mentioned, just with the suits and the technological aspect.
Yep.
And there's some Game of Thrones in here, like just the king and your place on the throne.
The different kingdoms within Wakanda.
Yeah, kind of like the houses in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And it's cool. It's like, I mean, not that there's not stuff like this in the Black Panther comics, but like the mythos he set up with like the 5 tribes.
Yeah.
Which I know there's many tribes in real life in Africa, but just how he was the king of these 5 major tribes within Wakanda.
And they were all different settings with on the mountain. And
you had like a warrior tribe, a farming tribe. You had the main like.
What was like
royal...
the northern tribe where they're in the mountains and it's... Which one was that one, Brad?
When they're in the snow. I can't remember the name of them.
But they're like against the technology. They're like, we don't want...
What was the guy's name? Oroku or...
Yeah, I think.
Or Oroku. That sounds like that's Shredder's name. So I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But yeah, like they were all distinctly different. Like none of these African tribes blended
The one
together.
tribe that had the rhinos.
Yeah, that was awesome. And that was Daniel Kaluuya's tribe from Get Out. Which there's a great scene at the end with that we can get into. But I really, that was the costuming too, really set them apart. Especially the ones that were wearing that, the purple and the green, and they had the mouth piercings, which was kind of off-putting, but it was cool.
Well, some tribes in Africa have that, where it's like they stretch out the lower lip.
Yeah. I will tell you this. I was reading an article in Empire magazine about this, which we subscribe to, and Abby loves seeing those subscriptions in the mail every month.
I hope this one this month is the one I want.
It's not gonna be.
What?
The Empire's doing a Steven Spielberg tribute, so they did like all these different covers. So they did like...
They're like, I wonder which one she wants.
They did, Indiana Jones. They did E.T. They did Jaws and one other one. Of course, Abby wants the Jaws one. If you ever listen to her on this podcast, she knows her all-time favorite movie. We have so much Jaws stuff in our house, but and shark stuff in general. But no, like the one they're doing is like a Drew Struzan poster. Like it has all of his different movies. That's the subscriber cover. But honest to God, if you really want the Jaws issue, I'll go to Books A Million.
It doesn't matter.
And buy it for you. Maybe that'll be in your stocking next week. I'm
yeah,
just
great.
kidding. No, it is a cool cover though. I wish we were getting the Jaws. But anyway, I was reading an interview with Ryan Coogler in Empire Magazine, and he talked about how he had never been to Africa, and he said he wouldn't film this movie unless he got to go. So he went out there for a month or so, and then he flew his family out there because he wanted them to have that authentic African experience, you know, because he made this point. I can't speak on this, of course, I'm not black, but he said he was African American, not African, and there is a key difference.
Yeah.
And he wanted to see, for better or for worse, but you have obviously big income disparity all across the continent of Africa, but he wanted to see what it was actually like and have that reflected in his film rather than just reading about it. So I think
That
that's
makes sense.
pretty damn cool that he
he did his research on it.
For Creed, he went and lived in Philadelphia for like 2 months, just living amongst the people just to see what they were like.
Oh, bless him.
Spoiler alert, they're assholes. Sorry to any Philadelphia
You've never been
listeners.
there.
I've never been there,
But I have.
they celebrate their team winning the Super Bowl by looting a convenience store.
Oh my God, it's unreal.
Yeah, speaking of
Philadelphia.
real, let's go ahead and roll the spoiler reel
Jesus.
forward for Black Panther starting now. So spoilers for Black Panther starting now, as mentioned earlier. Fair warning here if you're one of the 2 people in the country who haven't seen this.
Jerry,
you're one of those 2 people. Abby just called you out. So I want to just start out with this question. We just mentioned how we love Michael B. Jordan. You've seen most of the Marvel movies. You haven't seen all of them.
yeah,
Like, you
I've seen the
hadn't
good
seen,
ones.
Like Thor. You hadn't seen Incredible Hulk.
No.
Hadn't seen Thor: The Dark World, which is the worst and has the worst villain, Malekith the Cursed, the Dark Elf. We won't get into that.
Yeah.
But of all the MCU villains, is Killmonger, is Michael B. Jordan the best, you think? Or is it just this is so fresh, so new, so good, so people just want to be definitive and say he's the best? What do you think?
I don't know. What do you think?
It's tough for me.
You haven't seen Infinity War yet, though.
Yeah, I know, but I just don't think Thanos is gonna be. I think Thanos is gonna be a badass.
Well, who else would be in that category? Loki?
Definitely Loki. So
I think Loki and Killmonger are kind of similar, though, where they have the backstory.
The personal backstory.
Yeah. So where they're tortured.
For different reasons.
Yeah.
This is the most realistic villain the MCU's ever had.
Yeah.
This is the most it's a heavy villain. It's a dense villain. Obviously, probably
It's
literally.
like sometimes you wanted to pull for him.
And that's the sign of a good villain, right? When you feel yourself rooting for him. Now, you know, it's not like the Joker where it's just like an incredible performance by Heath Ledger. And you're just like, oh God, what's this guy going to do? And he was just chaos, right? But this was like his motivations. Yeah. You were sympathetic. So at the beginning of the movie, what happens is that we're in Oakland. We see that Killmonger's dad gets killed.
Yeah, which we didn't know that at the time. You find that out later that was T'Challa's uncle, and that his dad...
Who was played by Sterling K. Brown from This Is Us, which we don't watch.
And, yeah, we're like...
We're like the 2 people that don't watch This Is Us. We'll get there when it's on Netflix like 2 years from now. But back to that scene in Oakland. It's powerful, right?
It is.
The spaceship pulls up and this little boy gets... You don't know
it's him.
Even though you see him on the court.
But you find out and you're like, oh, crap.
Yeah, because he was... the uncle, T'Challa's uncle, was just very torn. He didn't think enough was being done by this rich African country to help.
That could help their people
all
over the world.
And specifically in America. So
right.
The obvious parallel that people want to draw here, and I completely get that being a history nerd and teacher.
Oh, yeah.
Is Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. Now, Malcolm
I forgot
X,
about that.
Yeah, Malcolm X was by any means necessary. He was the more violent. Now, Malcolm X, he was not a member of the Black Panther Party, who was they were a socialist black revolutionary group from the late 60s into the 1970s. And there's a new Black Panther Party now, but we won't get too political here on this podcast. Malcolm X, everybody thinks he was this extremist, and he was extreme.
Because that's how they teach it in schools.
Yeah,
at least when we went to school.
He's not this necessarily extreme. He was just so fed up just with the way his people were getting treated that he did, suggest more extreme measures. But at the end of his life, a year before he died, he denounced violence and thought that civil disobedience of Martin Luther King was the best thing. And he ended up getting assassinated over that by some of the people who thought he should be more violent. There was a black Muslim radical group. I can't think of the name of them now off the top of my head. And then, of course, people compare more T'Challa to being like Martin Luther King. Here's the thing. Being the history nerd, I see the Killmonger and Malcolm X parallel. I don't see the Martin Luther King T'Challa.
I don't really either.
Other than the fact that maybe he's more peaceful, but Martin Luther King was doing anything and everything he could do to help his people. T'Challa was, he was helping his people, as in not African Americans, not people of African descent.
The Wakandans.
Helping the Wakandans, yeah, but it never felt like, and I know this is kind of what the movie was about, was pushing him toward that. It never felt like he was doing everything he could, did it?
Well, that's the way his father was, and so I think that had to do with it.
He was an isolationist.
Right. He wanted to sustain his country and to make sure his people were taken care of.
Yeah. And speaking of societal issues and society in general, do you think this is like the most meaningful societal superhero film ever made? Like, it's got to be this or Wonder Woman, right?
Yeah. I'd say both of them are pretty.
Dark Knight's up there too, because you have all the issues about freedom versus security.
Yeah.
But to put yourself in your first outing, I know we saw him in Civil War, but that wasn't his movie. But in the conversation with the Dark Knight and Wonder Woman, that shows you the quality of this film. Like, you've seen, again, you're talking to two of the whitest people ever, if you can't tell right now. But, I've seen, and that's one of the big reasons I wanted to have Amos on this podcast, not just because he was black, but because this movie meant a lot to him in the same way that Wonder Woman meant a lot to Abby.
Yeah.
Because Abby's a female. And Black Panther's a hero for all people. You don't have to just be black to, enjoy the character. That's not what I'm saying. But this film means something. This character now means something. Right. To a lot of people across the country who they can see.
Especially now with going into politics. I won't do that because...
Yeah, we'll go ahead and say the president, he who mustn't be named, we know has not been the most respectful toward African Americans, and neither one of us
He's not respectful
agreed.
Towards anybody.
That's true. And women, too. And that was what made Wonder Woman, the fact that it came out at that time period.
A big FU to that mindset, and the same for this movie, too.
Yeah, I think it's a big FU to...
Which I thought Wonder Woman and this movie were very similar to each other, and I enjoyed both movies a lot. Because they had the political undertones and... So, that final scene... there is, I don't think this movie is perfect. It does have some problems. We talked about some of the CG already, but to me, this movie's at its best when it's the ideology of Killmonger versus the ideology of Black Panther. Mm-hmm. And
while it's not a direct parallel of X and MLK, there are similarities. But when it gets bigger in scale, right? When you have this giant war between some of the tribes in Wakanda who are backing up Killmonger, who goes into Wakanda and takes over the throne because he kills T'Challa, at least we think he does.
Right.
See, I think that's where the movie... Not that those scenes weren't cool. I mean, you're in the middle of an epic fight scene and you see a rhino come up and lick Michonne from The Walking Dead in the face, and Abby's heart melted when that happened. But it's just... I think the movie... Like, why does every superhero movie have to be a giant battle at the end? Like, why can't it just be a one-on-one fight between the good guy and the bad guy? Did we really need all that extra fighting? Did that bother you or not? Like the fighting outside of Killmonger and T'Challa?
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit much. It was just too much at the end.
Yeah.
You know, where you're like, this is not the true fight right now. This is, I don't know.
Yeah, like...
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that until now, but...
It cuts back and forth between the big fight between the tribes and then the good fight, which there's some CG problems, but it's still a good fight between Black Panther and Killmonger.
Which is what you really wanted to see.
Yeah, the whole time you're like, all right, damn it, cut back to that fight.
And that's why, yeah, Civil War is so good, because at the end it's Iron Man versus Captain America.
Yeah, you're not...
You don't have all the extra characters fighting and... But I don't know. I mean, I don't think their fight... I don't know. I wasn't impressed by
You talking
them.
about the tribe fighting, right?
Yeah. There was just too much going on, and it wasn't focused on just, you know...
Now, you get to see Michonne kick some ass.
Yeah. I didn't even realize that was Michonne.
Danny Guerrera. So, yeah, it is Michonne. Yeah, it definitely is. So... I can't believe you didn't realize that was her. But she is bald in this film. She doesn't have her dreadlocks. But her name's Okaya, and she is the leader of basically his top, what would you call them? Top what? Like his guards, let's say. But they're more than guards. They're like almost not an assassin group, but it's the equivalent to like...
They pledged their life to the throne.
Yeah, exactly. The equivalent to like the Night's Watch in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Like they're the first defense and the last defense at the same time.
For his...
Maybe that's not the best parallel, but
they're all female.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They're badass and they're all female. Was that not empowering to see that?
I actually liked that because what's his name? It starts with an O. The guy that was trying to...
Who?
The first time when he was made king of Wakanda, the guy who was challenging him
I can't remember
had
his name.
All male guards, and I thought that was cool that T'Challa had all female guards. It's kind of like Amazon.
A lot similar to the Amazonians there. But the thing is, you have this strong...
What's the Valerians or whatever in Thor? I don't even remember.
The Valkyries.
Valkyries, yeah.
Yeah, similar to that
Valerian.
Too. But you have this strong, Black Panther, this male king, and then you have these powerful females protecting him. And
the lion and the lioness.
Yeah, and the message like that projects and stuff. There's so many good little moments. Like, he is in love with Lupita Nyong'o's character, who's went off to do, like, humanitarian work. And... there's this thing, don't blink, because he blinks, he gets so infatuated. Don't freeze. What am I saying? Don't blink. It's like a Kenny Chesney song. But yeah, don't freeze. And then what does he do? He freezes because he's in love with this girl. And sometimes when you're in love with a girl, you daydream just a little bit, like I did with you when we got in that wreck.
Oh yeah.
See, I rear-ended somebody right after we graduated college, and it was because I was so infatuated with Abby. That's what I tell her.
Wow.
And it's the truth. Like, I looked over at you, and next thing you know, and now you criticize my driving every time I hit
Now I have
PTSD
brakes. When you drive.
Yeah, for real. I just want to bring up a nitpick I've heard people say online, like film, Twitter, and stuff. a lot of people don't like that Everett Ross's character is a CIA agent, and you have this white guy coming in to help save the day. First of all, he doesn't save the day. He assists.
Right.
He's not, there's this, notion in film of a white savior. I don't think that's the case here. Now, I'm a white guy saying this, so, take that with a grain of salt, no pun intended there. But, I mean, he helped, but the only reason he was able to do what he was able to do is because Shuri
saved him.
Yeah, she saved him,
but he saved Lupita, and that's why they took him back to Wakanda.
You know what I don't understand? Everett Ross is in the comics, okay?
Yeah.
And Everett Ross is like he's like a nobody in the government. Like, he works like at the FBI or CIA, but he's not really in the CIA. He does like paperwork, and he ends up being one of the only ones that believes in Wakanda and trusts Black Panther. And believes this guy's a king.
Did he know about the secret Wakanda before he went there?
In this movie?
Yeah, because remember...
He had heard rumblings of it, but he didn't know.
He was, yeah. Or he had kind of like an inkling.
Well, Andy Serkis, we played the clip in the trailer before this review.
That there was something else going on there.
Yeah, they were interrogating him, and these people thought Wakanda was just like a village.
Yeah, like a third world country.
Yeah. What'd you think of Andy Serkis in this movie as Claw?
I didn't even realize that was Andy Serkis because he plays like Gollum and all these other
Snoke. Caesar from
that
Planet
you don't
of the
see
Apes.
him
Until I told you, I said to Abby during the movie, I like nudged her and whispered, I said, it's weird to see him play like
it was weird seeing a
real character.
But he's a good actor. I thought his role was good, but
what about when he was singing What Is Love?
He's just crazy as hell.
He was crazy. And he ends up getting killed. He isn't the main villain.
No.
He is like a sit-up for Killmonger.
Yeah.
But he's still good when he's in there.
Yeah.
And
it's not just a throwaway character. Just thrown in there to...
It pulled off two villains well, even though Killmonger was the main villain. But what I was going to say about Everett Ross, who, speaking of Gollum, Martin Freeman he's Bilbo Baggins, ain't he? He's one of the hobbits. Martin
Which one
Freeman
is that?
I don't know. You're the Lord of the Rings fan.
Lord, I haven't seen those movies since I was in high school, though.
Let's see who he plays. Let's see if Jerry had actually watched the movie, he would have knew this off the top of his head.
Well, I don't know the hobbits, but I could tell you who, like...
Let's see. Who is he in Lord of the Rings? He's Sam Gamgee. Does that sound like a right? Oh wait, no. Hold on.
I never saw The Hobbit.
No, he's Bilbo. He's Bilbo Baggins.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so Martin Freeman. But anyway, he plays a CIA agent. He was never a CIA agent in the books, and everybody's like, why'd they make him a CIA agent? Because there's some outrage on the internet because the CIA, like, they work directly to really undermine the Black Panther organization in the civil rights movement. Again, this is Black Panther in name only. He's not a black revolutionary, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, but they just borrow that name. But if it's worth talking about, I'll say that. All right, Abby, just some questions here as we wrap up the 86th edition of the Confirmed Epic Podcast. In your eyes now, is Black Panther an A-list Marvel character? Like, would you put him up there with Spider-Man, Iron Man, and Cap based off of this movie and Civil War?
Yeah, I think so.
Really?
Well, he's everywhere.
I think so too, but it's just crazy what this MCU has done. I told this story before, but first time I ever went to a comic book shop was 2003. Like, really went to buy comics. And I went with my friends Paul and Joe, and I was asking them about all the characters because they had been reading. And I'm like, who's this? Who's that? And they're like, that's the Fantastic Four. That's Gambit, whatever. And then I got to this issue. It was Iron Man. I was like, who's that? It's Iron Man. Oh, you don't want him. He's a shitty character. He's a drunk. Nobody cares about him.
Was he a drunk?
Yeah, in the comics, yeah.
Oh.
And he's sober now. But anyway, now look at Iron Man. He's just as popular as
He's so
Spider-Man.
recognizable, and that's how I feel like the Black Panther is now, too. Everybody knows based off his costume and everything.
And I think Wakanda, as it looks like it will, and him, as it looks like he will play a big role in Infinity War. After that, like, I think he's A-list, but I think he'll be in that Iron Man, Spider-Man territory after Infinity War. I think you could argue him there now. What would you, if there's one thing, I know I'm putting you on the spot, so if you don't have an answer for this, it's okay. Abby graciously volunteered for this podcast.
I didn't volunteer.
What's one thing you would like to see in Black Panther 2? Is there anything? Like any character interaction? Any villain, which I know you don't know all the Marvel villains. I'll tell you mine.
Well, like a cameo appearance?
Yeah, yeah, sure. What you got?
I don't know.
Well, you can think about it and butt in if you think of one. I would like to see Kraven. Now, Kraven the Hunter is a Spider-Man villain.
Oh.
And how cool would it be to see him introduced in Black Panther? You know, what is the ultimate hunting gig than to hunt down Black Panther in this place that should be, you hear Cookie the Beagle going nuts in there, a place that should be undiscoverable, and then to have him spin out of that, and no pun intended, be in a Spider-Man movie. I don't know, that Kraven's interacted with Black Panther in the comics. Kraven's a badass, like, Spider-Man villain. I would like to see that, because this Black Panther, like, claws his biggest arch rival, who Andy Serkis played. I would like to see maybe one day, not anytime soon, but it wouldn't bother me if Shuri became Black Panther at some point.
I don't think that will happen.
Not anytime soon,
No.
but I mean, with these movies, they're going to keep them going forever, so never say never. Do you think it's over? I'm not going to talk about oversaturation because I've talked about that before, but just as I'm a diehard fan, we do podcasts. We talk so much about DC and Marvel. This is a big part of my life, Jerry's life, Andrew's life. Like, as somebody who's a so-so fan, do you think we got too much right now?
Well,
but you just said, you think we have too much, but you just freaking love this movie.
Okay, so because he's a totally new character, but like you said, we just talked about this with like the Fantastic Four being,
we did on the way home
like,
from dinner.
I think there's a little oversaturation there because they're going to recreate their own Fantastic Four. And how many Fantastic Four movies?
Okay, first of all, there's been one so-so and one shitty Fantastic Four. They've never been handled by the people who know them best, Marvel. And
I'm just not.
I love the Fan Four, but you're judging them off the movie like most people are.
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm just not a huge X-Men fan anyway.
Until Marvel in the movies, I'm not talking about TV shows, okay? Because Punisher's like watching paint
oh
dry
my gosh. Yes, they have all those TV shows too. I'm like, how can anybody absorb all this?
Well, here's the thing. You don't have to absorb all of it.
Yeah, but for you, like the fanboys, they feel like... Well, not with the TV shows, but with the movies.
Well, the movies, yeah, that's different. We get 2 or 3 of those a year where there's 13 episodes of a
How many
Netflix
have there been
show.
this year? Well, this is a new
Black
year.
Panther.
But in 2017...
You had Spider-Man Homecoming, just Marvel,
Thor.
You had Guardians of the Galaxy, and Thor. You had 3.
Okay.
This year you have 3 again. You got Black Panther, Infinity War, and Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
I think 3's good. I think 2 would be better. 1 every 6 months.
Do you think the superhero thing's going to get old, though?
Every time I think it is.
Because, you know, it used to not be so cool.
I went to high school when it wasn't cool, Abby.
When did it start? When Batman?
2 things. It got mainstream when Dark Knight and Iron Man came out. They came out in the same summer, 2008.
Did they really?
Yeah, Iron Man came out in May. That started the MCU. Then you had arguably the best superhero movie ever, The Dark Knight, all the Heath Ledger stuff. Like, it just was like a perfect storm. And now, Abby, like, when I was in high school, unless you wanted to be picked on, you're not wearing, like, a Spider-Man shirt or something.
When I met you and I, like, learned that you read comic books, I was like, really?
Yeah, but now, you know...
But now, it's like...
I see these kids at school, You got what you'd say the cool kids, the geeky kids, the jocks, the theater they're all wearing superhero
Like, we would
stuff.
go to the beach and you would be reading your comic books and I would be like, oh, this is kind of weird. But now it's like not a big deal.
Well, dang, tell me how you really feel.
That was like in 08 when
oh.
all this started coming out.
Yeah.
And I didn't know I didn't grow up with that kind of media.
Yeah. Is this isn't? Do you think this is the best or your favorite MCU movie? My favorite is Winter Soldier. What's your favorite? Is it Cap, the first Cap?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
I just love him.
It's not going to be either one of our favorites, although I will say, standalone movie, if you pulled this out of the Marvel Universe, it may be the best movie. You don't think so?
I think it's up there, but I don't think it's the best.
Okay. All right, and sometimes you got to let this stuff cool down. And
like, initially I thought, yeah, it probably is, but now that I've sat on it for 2 weeks...
Yeah.
Nah. I mean, top 3.
Yeah, I think so. I think Winter Soldier... My favorite are Winter Soldier and Civil War.
I would still say Civil War is probably the best.
But it was so built up to, you know, so... and it's really best to ask this question after we see Infinity War. Because this whole thing's been building toward that. And yes, Abby... We're getting a sitter for...
We're going to get a date night.
That's our first date night planned already. We're going to eat what?
Sushi.
Which Abby can't have now.
And wine.
We're going to go see like a matinee of Infinity
Downtown.
War in Charlotte, and then we're going to go eat Roussan. So we're looking forward to that.
Our life is so exciting.
One thing that's really cool is Ryan Coogler wrote a letter to Marvel fans, you know, and just said... Thank you so much.
Well, he cried when he saw the outpouring of love for the movie, which I thought was really cool.
He's a really good dude. And he's best friends with Michael
deserves
B. Jordan.
Yeah.
Like, he's been in every one of his movies, Michael B. Jordan. He's been in Creed, Black Panther, Fruitvale Station, and Creed 2. So, which is coming out at the end of this year.
They're besties.
You're going to watch Creed now, though, right?
I told you I would. I'm still not watching Rocky, though.
Oh, God. All right. So, Abby, on our ratings scale, crap, good, great, epic, what would you rate Black Panther?
Epic.
Confirmed epic. Okay. I'm going to
There's not anything I didn't like about it.
Yeah. I'm going to give it a great and a half.
Really?
And the only
You're
reason
so picky.
is because the CG... and some of the shots, like that. But that was all technical. That wasn't story-wise. That wasn't acting. That wasn't character beats. So I'm going to say confirm great and a half. It's just on the cusp of being the best of the best Marvel has to offer. But it's not quite there. But it's in like the upper echelon. So Abby says a epic, and I say a great and a half. All right, so next week on the Confirmed Epic podcast, we are scheduled, keyword scheduled, to be joined by Andrew Stokes, and we're going to review the Cloverfield Paradox, which is on Netflix.
You're going to watch that?
Are you going to watch it with me?
No.
Why?
I just don't want to.
All right. So, Abby, is there anything else you want to say in closing before we wrap this up?
Not really.
Just probably next time you
Probably
podcast.
next time I'm on here, I won't be pregnant anymore.
We will have had a kid.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Yeah, we're both really excited. Really excited. So, Abby, where can people find more of you on the internet? # Mother of Beagles.
You're the only one that calls me that. Just FYI.
Andrew calls you that. Jerry calls you that.
Okay, you three.
Yeah.
I mean...
She needs to... It's probably already taken on Twitter now, but you need to get that on Twitter. All right, speaking of Twitter, you can find me at The Real Brad Bell, DREEL Brad Bell. Instagram at The Confirmed Epic Podcast. Check Jerry's action figure reviews out. He serves them up hot and fresh daily at actionfigurebarbecue.com. That's barbecue spelled out. Of course, you can find this at theepicreview.com, thepicreview.com. Go buy our shirts. tpublic.com/user.
Yeah, the sweatshirts are really comfortable.
/TheRealBradBell. Yes, they are. The
Oh my
sweatshirts
God.
are really comfortable.
I don't know if I could have survived without the sweatshirt.
Piece of advice: get the thin. It gives you
Yes.
an option between a regular sweatshirt, which are really hot, and then a thin sweatshirt, which is just cool to wear
That's
around the house.
amazing.
It breathes. I mean, it's really good. And I just ordered a sweatshirt.
Because I took yours.
Yeah, you took mine. I got a zipper one, though. You can get a zipper one. I got a zipper one lightweight,
Oh,
Geeks
she's
Worldwide.
kicking. Yeah.
Yeah, she loves that sweatshirt. They have baby onesies, too.
Oh, God.
Harper is getting a pink
Harper
confirmed
has
Epic Podcast onesie.
a lot of onesies.
Unique clothing.
Unique onesies.
A lot of Panthers, lots of NC State.
Lots of her. Well,
Lots of Wonder Woman. Got a Batgirl.
yeah.
So
She needs a Yankees one now. That's the only one. Because she's
Now-
got a Hurricanes one.
real quick, I know I'm putting you on the spot here, and we're about to wrap up. But do you want to tell our listeners where I found the name Harper?
No, that's not why we're naming her that, though.
Okay, but I found it in a Batman comic. Scott Snyder, I think it was his 7th issue. New
She is
52
not
Batman,
named after this character.
introduced Harper Robe, a.k.a. Bluebird, who was
It's
a
not
big,
like Kevin Smith, where we're naming her after a Batman character.
Yeah, of course, Harley Quinn Smith. Oh, Kevin Smith.
I know. I'm surprised you didn't bring that up.
Yeah, thoughts and prayers to him, and one of the nicest guys in all of geekdom. Like, he just is authentically nice. He cares about his fans. He's very personable. Like, I listen to a lot of his podcasts. We watch Comic Book Man. His movies are good, but it's the podcast that really, just he feels like he's talking with you instead of to you or at you, and that's just such a unique thing. And he really inspired me when I was first starting podcasting. I was like, who gives a shit about this?
Do you have his book?
Yeah, it's called Life Advice from a Fat Lazy Slob Who Got Lucky,
You have the shirt that says Fat Man on Batman.
which is his big geek podcast. But Kevin Smith was doing a podcast, just kind of talking about whatever, and he said, look, get out there, put a mic, put a computer in front of your face, record it. He's like, if 2 people listen to it, who cares? Which, believe it or not, more than 2 people listen to this podcast. Thank you for doing so. But he said, even if 2 people just listen to it, he's like, what's the worst case scenario? You got conversations with your friends you can go back and listen to 10, 20 years
Which
from
you
now.
do all the time.
I do. Well, I listen to the older ones. I do. I like to go back and just hear Jerry make false promises, like say he won't collect Star Wars Black. There may be a new podcast coming down the pipeline just from Jerry, but more on that later. All right. This has been a proud presentation of the Geeks Worldwide Radio Network. You can find them at dgww.com. And once again, from the Hollywood foothills of North Carolina, we are out.
That's all I have to say about that.
This has been a production of the GWW Radio Network. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Also, check out Geeks Worldwide at thegww.com for all the latest news, reviews, and opinions on video games, comics, movies, TV, cosplay, and more. Geeks, assemble!